So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio, and today is Monday, October 30th, 2023, and their call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us, and we would love to hear your comments and questions and have a discussion with you, because that makes it your show. And we'll give Michael just a moment to dial in and refresh my screen to get back into the chat room. It's contrary and won't let one of us or two of us in at one time, so I have to refresh after Dr. Tim hangs up to be able to get into the chat room. So we're glad that you're with us. And if you have a question, we want to hear from you. I did a few changes on the website yesterday. Actually, one of them is that Michael and I had some pictures made at Walmart the other day, and they came back very well. And so I changed our pictures on our website so that they're more current. And we don't have the little one today, so hold Arya in the space. Her mom had to go pick her up from school. She's not feeling very well today, so we were supposed to get her this afternoon, and we're not. So we just send love in her direction. And Michael and I had a beautiful weekend. Saturday we went, there's a place called Crabtree Falls, and it's the highest waterfall east of the Mississippi River. It's higher than Niagara. Now it's not but a little bit wide, and Niagara's humongous wide. But anyway, we hiked 2 miles up, 2 miles back down. It took us about 3 hours, I think, to do the whole thing. So we got our exercise in, and yesterday found out that we had a few more muscles, so we kind of just took the day relaxing. We've been out this morning getting things prepped. Cold weather is coming our way. Those of you who are up north have probably already gotten it, but we've had some beautiful weather. Actually, Saturday when we went walking or hiking, it was up in the 70s and humid. And but starting tomorrow, we're going to start dropping. The evenings are down in the low 20s. So we went out and we started preparing our gardens for the winter. And so it's another phase. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Yeah, it's been a fast season. I think about when we opened the garden up back last, what did that happen, April, and how quickly that's gone by. Pretty amazing. In any event, delighted everybody's here to continue this conversation, to expand this conversation. In the Aramaic language, the word heaven, when we talk about the kingdom of heaven is within, the word that's translated there as heaven can actually be also translated as the kingdom of expansion. They talk about exploring outer space and this expanding universe. Maybe we're designed to expand into the truth of who we are fully rather than get stunted and locked into the past. You might remember there's a chapter in my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, called The Has-Been. And that the mind tends to, the only thing it can do is serve up what's in it. And if it serves up something painful, of course, it's easy to bypass the fact that it's the mind that's serving up what's painful and pretend that it's what somebody else does that's causing the pain. And what we're looking to do here is to understand that if the mind is serving up something painful, it's because there's pain inside. Ta-da! How shocking. I mean, short of a punch in the nose, cancel the thought, nobody can cause you pain. And yet people do all kinds of things, and the denial is so built into our language. Oh yeah, when that happened, that made me so mad. She said that, and that just enraged me. Well, he just wouldn't quit it, and that just, frustrated me to no end. Oh, every time I think about the world situation, it just pains me so deeply. I mean, look at the kind of ideas that are built into our culture. You know, you go back to this man Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he says the power of life and death is in our words. Words represent frequencies. Frequencies represent energetic patterns that we're putting into our structure with our words and our thoughts. And if this body-mind unit is serving up something based in pain, unfortunately in the culture, and I think in part it's because of the commercial culture that's ready to sell us addictive substances that tend to go hand in hand with addiction. Now, of course, anything can be used as an addiction. Our definition of this work of addiction is the compulsive use of any person, place, circumstance, substance, or activity to keep from hearing and following our highest guidance, being in touch with who we really are, and or to anesthetize against pain. And so anything can be an addiction. And of course, if we add person messages on top of an addiction, or I have an addiction to alcohol, I am a terrible person. Well, you know, probably the terrible person thing came before the addiction. Probably a power person message that said you're a terrible person. That may have been actively, there are two types of power person messages that we get into. One is active, you know, the power person actually says the words and we buy it. The other is passive. The power person does the behavior, and what that behavior resonates in us, we make the assumption, we take a message away from it. And it really doesn't matter which way we acquired it. If we begin to remove the power person messages, the tendency will be for the addiction to disappear. Now, the addiction itself was a way of adapting and surviving. Now, unfortunately, in the long term, most addictions don't support surviving. Initially, they were things that allowed us to at least cope. Now, at what cost, of course, is a big question. But when we start to dismantle the messages, you know, for the person who's in an active addiction, over the years I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of people who came into this work doing addictive substances and or engaging in addictive emotions. And what I observed was people didn't really even have to put an effort into getting rid of their addiction if they put the effort into forgiving the trauma-based mind energy that they held in their structures, removing it from their structures. If they allowed their pain to surface directly and used the tools with which to dissolve the energetic patterns behind the pain, the addiction just naturally dropped away. I remember one very dramatic example was a woman I worked with in South Florida. Her husband was Joe businessman, and she lived in her fancy house and had her two kids, and every night, about 9 o'clock at night, her husband would come home from his addictive job, and they'd have 2 or 3 drinks before dinner. They'd have a bottle of wine with dinner, and they'd have 2 or 3 drinks after dinner. Now, she was an alcoholic. She was very clear. No, I'm not an alcoholic. But this was a 7-day-a-week routine. She started to do this work and decided she was going to stop drinking. And actually, she was, you know, she did that fairly well. So it perhaps was not really an addiction. It was just a habit. But after a period, I remember she came into a session. It was maybe 5 years after she'd quit drinking. Like, she hadn't touched alcohol in about 5 years. She'd been divorced and hadn't touched alcohol and was really tapping in and doing this work. And she came into a session and shared with me that she'd been at a party the weekend before, and someone offered her a drink. And she accepted it, some kind of hard liquor or whatever it was. And what she said was, I no more than got that liquid on the tip of my tongue and in my mouth, and it felt like razor blades in my kidneys. She could feel the impact of the alcohol in her kidneys before she even swallowed it. Now, when there's a load of pain that's being anesthetized, then the addictive substance or behavior is experienced as something positive. Oh, this alleviates my pain. But when you take away the pain, then the deleterious effect of the substance becomes very clear. When it's no longer serving the purpose of alleviating pain because you've dealt with the pain, then it's experienced as the toxic substance that it is, and it just naturally drops away. People are just like, there's no attraction to it anymore. So the tool for handling pain, of course, is the tool of forgiveness. And we'll say it again and again and again and again. Never, ever forgive anybody for anything. And never forgive the person that you look at in the mirror for anything. However, if you're going to heal, you must forgive continuously. How many people hear that as, well, that's a conflict, Michael. Michael, you're telling me not to forgive myself for anybody else, but you're telling me to forgive continuously. Like, what goes? What gives? We've been tricked. We've been conned in this culture. If the man Yeshua, who brought the forgiveness work to earth that we're doing, that we're working with today, that we're reviving in the earth, if we went back to that culture, what we would hear is this man Yeshua saying, you have pain in you, you need to go inside yourself and remove your pain. You need to be responsible for your pain, and you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother. Now, let's translate that. There are two words missing in that statement about forgiving from your heart. And there's a mistranslation of the word heart, because he wasn't talking about that organ, and he wasn't talking about some kind of a wishy-washy, forgive from your heart type of thing. That word heart in our modern updated language would be the unconscious. So what he was saying is you must remove from your unconscious that which your brother just brought up in you and you put into your brain's image of him. That's where your pain resides. Your brother didn't cause your pain. There's no need to forgive him ever. But you forgive as to what he brought up in you. And when you're free of your pain, then you'll no longer be blaming your brother for your pain, and you'll be free of your addiction, because you won't be driven by unconscious pain and the need to relieve it. So there's a positive aspect to addiction, that it, in the short term, is a mechanism for adapting and surviving. But with an addiction, there's never thriving, and the long-term consequences are pretty deleterious. So instead of letting anybody else off the hook, if Yeshua sat in most of the Western world today where they're talking about you got to forgive everybody, whether it's psychologists or churches or what have you, he'd say, that's all Greek to me. He never, ever told anybody to forgive another person. But he understood if you're in pain, it's because there's an energy in you that's causing your pain. And if you're in denial, i.e., you think or speak as though something outside of you is the cause of what's moving inside of you, then you've dissociated from the content of your own mind. And that dissociated painful content has to be addressed and removed from your unconscious or your heart. And a dissociated piece of content, by definition, is unconscious content. You must forgive from your heart, from your unconscious, that which you put into your brain's image of another. So you remove it from your own structure, and you're freed of the burden of that. Nothing whatsoever to do with letting anybody else off the hook. So never let anybody off the hook, but forgive continuously. Every time you come across something that's painful or something that's on the spectrum of negative, hostility or fear-based thinking, If you want the youth, if you want to heal, if you want to change, the becoming of your physiology, you're constantly in a state of becoming. If you never learn to forgive the content of your physiology, then you'll be going by the past. You'll be becoming out of your past dynamics. If you understand that and you learn to remove those dynamics from your structure, then you get to purposely, consciously engage in the energy of becoming what is really possible for you as a human being. And when we arrive in our lives as the active presence of love, especially in the presence of the person who knows exactly how to give you the look, when we arrive, the simple presence of our true human lives, which is love, means that whatever that brother or sister has resonated in you that's painful, frustrating, traumatic, whatever it is, if you arrive when that's moving and you're facing it directly, it dissolves. It is the universal solvent. The active presence of a human life in a human mind and body means that anything of a diseased nature in that human form that surfaces, comes out of hiding or becomes active, dissolves. And life, abhorring death, has a purpose. And its purpose is to kick you right square in the limitation, to show you exactly what you're holding on to that never belonged within your structure. So when you realize that life operates by the law of resonance, energy exchange, then by holding a particular energetic pattern within you, anyone in the neighborhood that has a similar energetic pattern is going to perk their ears up and turn toward you. You are going to start to move, march toward them, and they are going to start to move or march toward you. You will find each other. So this law of resonance says, if there's a disease in the system of any person, whoever has the matching bag of garbage that can resonate that disease energy is going to show up and do the behavior that will resonate it. And when they resonate that unconscious trauma and pain, that which you hold in your heart, if instead of projecting it and putting it into your brain subconscious of your brother, instead of walking away talking about them, if you stop and go, oh, I have pain here. Oh, I notice I've got some negative thinking going on. Oh, my brother, it justifies my negative thinking when he does. Well, wait a minute. Your physiology is being impacted by your thinking. Now, maybe he deserves something. That's a debatable point, but maybe he does. In fact, I might even say, gee, I watched the terrible behavior he did, and I agree he deserves it. Maybe he deserves it in spades. But the real question is, do you deserve it? Because on an energetic level, what you originate, you store in your physiology. And it takes time, if you've been storing, and if generationally hostility and fear has been being stored within your structure, it takes time to dissolve. It takes dedication. In order to change the underlying energy out of which the mind functions, takes dedication and work. Many people start to grasp what the forgiveness process is and what this work is about, and they're so excited. And then they come up with something like, well, now I got it. That's awesome. I've got $5 in 5 minutes. Tell me everything you know. Well, no. We got a 12-year conversation going on here, 5 days a week, an hour to 2 hours a day. Listen to it all. Listen to every word, and you'll be well on the road to starting the next level of your work. Now, that can be disheartening to some. You mean I'm not going to be finished in 5 years? No, you're not going to be finished in 5 years. Well, how about 10? No. 20? No. But each step that you take, when you realize that what you're living on top of and what most people are living out of is a multi-generational database with, I mean, uncountable numbers of unresolved ancestral dynamics. Countless. You know, the scriptures talk about going back 4 generations for those energetic patterns. But when you think about it, the 4th generation back got their patterns from who? The previous 4 generations. Who got them from? The previous 4. Who got them from? Who got them from? And if you go back 30 generations, you have within your genetic structure, within your multi-generational database, the unresolved and the resolved dynamics of 1.6 billion people. 1.6 billion. And these generational patterns, because they've been in development and resonating, actively influencing people's lives for hundreds and hundreds of years in each of our bloodlines, the patterns don't die easily. You know, I look at the 50-plus years that I've been developing this work, and I recognize very clearly for me that the deepest, most important aspects of my own personal inner work have happened in the last 2 to 3 years. So it's a process, a lifetime process that you enter into, and that is taking on the generational patterns, at least spending some of your time focused on, instead of the outer world, focused on the inner. Now, it can be a big challenge to shift that. You know, we came into the world, and virtually everybody told us about how we had to focus out there. Oh, look at this shiny trinket. Oh, look at the tree. Look at the flower. Oh, look at the food. Look at this. Oh, look, we have a new toy for you. Look, 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 look. And the senses, the habitual dynamic of most of the culture is keep looking out here at something. And if nobody ever taught you to look within, I mean, at this point with Arya, who's now 5, when we say it's a meditation time, Arya will say, I'll lead it. And she'll sit us down and she'll put us in a posture and she'll start a guided meditation. She knows how to look within. How different would each of our lives been if when we were 2, 3, and 4, somebody, instead of focusing our minds outside, supported us, in fact instructed us and assisted us to stop, slow down the mind, slow down the body, and just look inside. Become aware of the source of the realities that your mind is basing its perception on. And then to have the skills of knowing how, if you encounter aberrant content in your mind, and aberrant content I would offer would be anything based in hostility or fear, that you learn to remove that content and recognize that that's forgiveness. Pardoning, yep, somebody out there does something, pardon them if you will. But the forgiveness work is about undoing and removing the unconscious dynamics in your own mind. So that's what we're here to support. That's what we're here to understand, and to enhance our understanding and our work of doing that. And in so doing, support you in the process. Most people aren't going to spend 50 years. And over the 50 years, probably the majority of the time was, they were 12, 14, 16-hour days, especially when we're on the road or at Harleyhan when workshops were going on. Not many people are going to take 50 years full time looking into and understanding what's going on with the mind. And I personally feel so totally and completely abundantly blessed by the fact that I 43, 44 years ago, had the great fortune of being introduced to the first century Aramaic language and the real and original work of Yeshua. We watch a lot of videos and, or touch with what's going on in different fields. And so often I'll hear somebody who's out there. I was actually listening to an interview with a psychiatrist yesterday, very well-known, world-renowned, and he's talking about, healing the mind. And, he's very well respected, and, the work he's doing is touching a lot of people. But unfortunately, he doesn't have the foundation of this man Yeshua, who had a depth of understanding that I have not seen it anywhere else in the world. If you can't go back to the Aramaic and get the foundation of how the mind works, how the filters work in the mind, how the breath works, if you don't have that foundation, people build all sorts of things based on perception. But when you realize that perception, the world you think you see out there, is nothing but a product of something moving inside of you, if you're working within the framework of perception, you're working within, well, if we were to, bring some numbers together, the world of perception, just as a metaphor, not trying to make any literal or accurate numbers out of it, but if we're working in the world of perception, if our conversation is about dealing with what's going on within the perceptual mind of human beings, we're working within maybe 20% of the actuality. And by definition, if you're working within a system where the assumptions from within the system are considered accurate, then whatever's not accurate about it is invisible. And so whatever the world comes up with, working out of 20% of the actuality, 80% is missing. When you bring Yeshua into it and you understand, just understanding the healing power of understanding who you are, of developing relationship with who you are as a human being, not who I am, not who somebody else is, but who you are. You go back to the ancient teachings, is that, it was the mind of Christ in you. Now that mind was not the mind of the man Yeshua. That was the mind of love in you. That when you build a relationship with that mind in you, your life heals. Without that mind active in you, it's like, David Bohm said it very well. He said most people, when they think, are doing nothing, think in the word quotes, in quotes, they're simply rearranging their prejudices. Because when you're working with a limited part of the puzzle, if you've made up a story, if you imagine that life is a billion-piece jigsaw puzzle, all of humanity down through the ages, I'm talking about all of the cultural events, all of the things that humans have done in recorded history and where we've arrived at today, we've maybe got 100,000 pieces of the puzzle. Now imagine there's a billion-piece puzzle, and you've got 100,000 pieces, and you assemble them in a way that you were able to tell a story about it. And then you get locked into that story. There's a cute song by the fellow who was the music director at Heartland, Joel Goldstein, back 40 years ago. And Joel wrote a song. You can check it out on YouTube. You can do a search for Stuck in My Story by Joel Goldstein. And the basic melody line of it is, stuck in my story, my pain and my glory. If you're working within the perceptual framework, you're stuck in your story. And if you can get the truth of who you are as a human being to visit that framework, then that framework starts to collapse and healing occurs. Because the active presence of life is now injected into that perceptual world. And it changes. It changes so dramatically until you've literally eradicated, the very possibility of that system even generating any form of hostility or fear. Now, not proclaiming I've achieved that, because I haven't. I'll be the first one to acknowledge and admit that. But to recognize that anything based in hostility or fear that shows up in your mind is based in corrupt data and is lying to you about who you are, about how your life works, and about the people around you, and about the world. And the major skill to be achieved in being able to free yourself from that is being able to collapse the story, being able to collapse the picture you made up of the 100,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that fills your mind, fills your eyes, fills your field of view. And then you realize, oh my God, there's a billion-piece jigsaw puzzle out there. You know, I'm climbing a mountain, and it's a long, hard slug, and I get to the top, and I'm 20 feet from the top, and I'm so joyful because now I've reached the top of the world. I go that extra 20 feet, and all of a sudden there's a whole mountain range in front of me. From where I sat, I was reaching the top of the world, but the truth was I'd hardly started the journey. So we're here to be a companion on that journey, to be co-directors of the journey with you, that your questions guide and direct a lot of where this radio show goes. And to recognize that we're in this together is, to me, a really important part of the process and the community that's developed around this work, the global community. Jeanie shipped the book out yesterday to someone in Poland. It's like things just move and move around the globe in all kinds of directions that we don't even know how it happens. But in any event, we're delighted that you're companions on this journey, that you interject your questions, that you put a hand up and give us your thoughts that allow us to be led in a different direction perhaps than we'd ever thought of. And that opens another piece of, oh, there's a corner over there with another 1,000 pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. Oh, there's another one over there. And before you know it, we're starting to approach at least getting a skeleton view of that billion-piece puzzle and what it means. And you can bet that the 100,000-piece story means absolutely nothing compared to the one that's behind and superior to it. So behind and superior to everything that you experience, there's a state of being the active presence of love. If you've been tricked into a false identity, you listen to Yeshua and he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die. He's saying that in your body-mind unit, in your perceptual system, you have built a self based on power person dynamics, based on generational patterns, and based upon cultural patterns. And that is nothing compared to who you are. So that self has to die, and the dying of that self expands the truth or the awareness of who we are. You hear people talking, you hear in the ancient scripture, I die daily. What are they talking about? The false self. Oh, I just discovered another aspect of myself, or what I thought was myself that isn't really. And so I'm willing and able to confront whatever is false in me and dissolve it. And much as it may be quite painful to lose that self, because there were hopes and dreams for that self, it's being replaced by something just 1 trillion times larger and 1 trillion times more meaningful. So putting one foot in front of the other and dissolving the self that isn't.
And we have two hands up.
Well, let's say hello to somebody who's got a hand up. Awesome.
The first one is Miss Susan, area code 610. You're on the air.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Welcome, young lady.
Thanks. Good talk and so much on point of what I wanted to tell you or ask. I'm on the vestry of my church, and one thing they do at the beginning of each meeting is have one of us lead a devotion. And I've been thinking about how the fact of our misunderstanding of the word forgiveness has allowed us to stay in a warring state with others.
Yep.
And I wanted to talk about the Aramaic forgiveness without wigging anybody out, you know. So I went online to see if there was any Christian writer who had done research on the Aramaic word for forgiveness, and I found a sermon written by Reverend Lisa Smith Fry back in 2017. And she explained how the meaning of a word in Aramaic can be pushed this way or that, or stretched this way or that, and that has led to not trusting interpretations of the word or not using whatever we might think is true. And anyway, so much of what's been written in scriptures has been translated into Greek, and the Greeks loved to make black and white distinctions instead of Aramaic being more fluid and inclusive. So she ended up with a few sentences that I thought approach the same meanings that you've been giving. So for the line, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us, could be heard as lighten our load of secret debts as we relieve others of their need to pay, or loose the cords of mistakes which bind us as we release the strands we hold of others' guilt. Or another one, untangle the knots within us so that we can mend our heart's ties to others. She says the word forgive in Aramaic reaffirms that our original state is clear and unburdened, and that our slender ties to God and each other are based on our ability to mutually release the cords of mistakes and failures that can bind us to each other, hurting both of us. So I thought I would, and she goes on.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's profound. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just downloading a PDF of her speech.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah,
I am.
Very interesting.
Of that sermon.
Good. Yeah. She says that Greek, as opposed to Aramaic, builds on, I'm quoting now, an unnatural division between God, nature, and humanity that is absent in Aramaic. It also is perfection-oriented. Greeks strive not for goodness, but for perfection. Another one is inner self and outer self are disjointed. Mind, body, and spirit are seen as separate things, always at war. And Paul, we've just been studying Romans in our Bible study class, Paul was very influenced by the Greek society that he lived in. Anyway, I won't read all of that, but this is giving me I don't need the legitimacy for myself. But if I tell him that I have this teacher I've had for 8 years or whatever it's been, who isn't within the strictest, and this is a very liberal parish, mind you, but it's just going to make it easier for me if I say, well, here's a sermon from Reverend so-and-so, and then I get to introduce the work, and I want to just keep sort of injecting it wherever possible, and get going on this. And eventually, I hope we'll all use your book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the resistance, the resistance of people to really looking within and dealing with what's there is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking right now what you triggered. The person who originally introduced me to the Aramaic language is a gentleman named Rocco Errico. You might look at some of his stuff.
Yeah.
And Rocco and I connected 45, 46, I'm not even sure exactly how many years ago. And we became friends. He used to come to Atlanta and speak at a center there that I went to. And over time we became friends. And the Aramaic became my focal point. And then I was doing workshops in Fort Lauderdale, and there was a gentleman from Albany, Georgia, who owned the Caboris manuscript. And he was in Fort Lauderdale, and we happened to connect and, sat and talked, and I started to work with him. And so the Aramaic became just my focal point. And Rocco had a center out west, and I had a center in South Florida, and I would bring him in to speak at my center, and he would bring me in to speak at his center. And I remember one year we were doing a conference together, and we each spoke a couple of times at this conference. And, my focal point was forgiveness. And it turned out when I spoke, I just happened to be on the roster ahead of him, and he was right behind me. And my whole conversation was about forgiveness. And about when he finished his presentation after, he's like, geez, Michael, that forgiveness stuff is yours. That's not mine. But most of his conversation just followed along the lines of forgiveness. And when he saw himself being kind of stepping into that, it was like, no. And Rocco's very intellectual and very, my take would be emotionally sensitive. And it touched places in him that he didn't want to go. So he was like, I'm not talking about the forgiveness stuff anymore, Michael. So unfortunately, and I don't know if I haven't really looked for any of Rocco's writings on forgiveness. Maybe you've inspired me to do that, to just see where he's gone with it. Because he was a protege of George Lamsa, who wrote the Lamsa translation, or did the Lamsa translation from the Aramaic into English. So interesting.
Oh, boy. Well, I think it's the answer, absolute answer to everything, of course. Just why are we fussing around?
The only reason that there are people in the world who are starving, there are people in the world who don't have water, there are people in the world who don't have homes. The only reason there are divorces, the only reason there are wars, is a lack of the understanding of forgiveness. If the world had an understanding of forgiveness, everything has led to every form of non-human, and when I say non-human, I mean those without love, aberration. Every form of it would just disappear. And everything, literally everything would be handled without it. And so that kind of speaks to why it hasn't become popular, because the generational impact of trauma and pain that has to be faced is monumental. And who wants to go there, number one, and number two, who's got the brain cells to go there? So, cool. I'll look forward to reading this sermon of Lisa's and maybe communicate with her.
Great. She is findable on the internet. She's a rector of Paris, up in New England somewhere. So
Awesome.
All right. Well, that's it.
All right, young lady. Well, thank you for that input, and any discoveries that you make in that regard, I would be honored to be privy to them.
Great. Okay.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Okay. Miss Jeanie, you've got somebody else with a hand up, I think.
I do, and it's area code 619. I believe it's Peter.
Good morning.
Welcome, young man.
Yes, I've been thinking. I kind of started working on what I thought was a major issue, and I remember back to Marianne Williamson when I discovered the Course in Miracles and did that.
Right.
She had a sentence. She said, as soon as you clear out your first big issue, everything else is going to come rushing in. So that's what I experienced this weekend. I was working on what I considered the big issue, and now I feel like I'm being flooded with multiple issues because I guess I couldn't see them before. So your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is another piece that comes out of the Aramaic. When I was speaking about those, there are lots of really fine psychiatrists and psychologists and theologians or ministers who are doing some great work, but they're working within the framework of perception rather than actuality. When you go back to Yeshua, you come to understand that there's this place where people substitute lies for truth. And we tie that piece of information into some research that was done at Harvard University back in the 50s, where they discovered that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. So we have, metaphorically at least, not necessarily absolutely literally, but a 9-bit mind. So 10,000 units of information are firing, and we get to see the end result of 9 of those units of information. And that's what floods our conscious awareness. Well, what happens is most people live in blockage of truth. That's why one of the key phrases is that we need to honor truth, that needs to be right up on top of the puzzle, a la Yeshua from the first century. Because if we don't honor truth, then what happens is our mind produces a lie. The lie, based in hostility or fear, fills the 9-bit space. There's no room for anything, awareness of anything else, and we call our lie the truth. Once we call our lie the truth, there's no room for truth to enter. We're now living in blockage of truth. That's the condition of the human mind. And what Yeshua gives, what this work is based on, is how do you bring correction? What are the principles by which you bring the mind back into alignment with truth and make the space? And I don't know if what you did was a worksheet this weekend or what, but especially when you collapse perception, when you utilize the forgiveness process and perception collapses, basically what you're doing is cleaning out the 9-bit mind and making space for something else to show up. When you add that into, okay, so I'm willing to honor truth, then you open the floodgates and things start to move. Also, if you do things that vitalize you physiologically, and I know you just started this weekend with your new Avison, when you do things that vitalize you physiologically, then a new level of vitality creates a flood and a flow of information of what has previously been blocked and couldn't get past the threshold of awareness. So that would be my take, that you're stepping into a higher level of vitality. And yeah, expect all kinds of issues that have gone on, perhaps from any time in your life, to start to surface, physiologically, mentally, emotionally. You know, when we talk about the step on the worksheet that says, I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms of healing. What does that look like? On a physical level, looks like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had and low energy. On a mental level, looks like any kind of negative thought you've ever had and confusion. On an emotional level, looks like any kind of negative feeling you've ever had and depression. That's what healing looks like. It's not Dr. Feelgood. And yeah, there's going to be, and I think that may be metaphorically the story about the flood, is that when we start to open the veil of the temple, you know, when they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain, they weren't talking about a purple curtain in a church. They were talking about the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind, an unnatural barrier. When you start to open that barrier, then all kinds of things start to show up that have previously been hidden away in the associated mind. So physiological vitality, emotional, mental willingness, and choice, beginning to do your work, opens the floodgates. That would be how I would explain what it is you're talking about. Does that fit for you? Does that touch into the area that you're questioning?
Yeah, I believe it 100%. I just didn't fully understand it because I forgot when we did this 35 years ago.
Right, it's been a while. Yeah. Well, and but, when you had texted me and you said that you were seeing your diabetic neuropathy start to disappear from your feet, and then you'd gone into this funk, this healing crisis. My take, as I texted back to you, is that whatever the toxic energies were that were stored in your circulatory system that were creating this state of neuropathy and diabetes, as you start to process it out, it's going to be in your face. It's not necessarily going to be Dr. Feelgood, and that's where, what most people do when that kind of energy starts to move is they stop whatever it is that's vitalizing them, and they go to their addictions and their ways of not feeling and not dealing. What we suggest is, instead of, let me go out and get myself a pint of ice cream when the stuff starts to move. No, it's let me go and make myself a sprout salad, vitalize, and do the next layer of this. But that's not the natural inclination of the person who's functioning out of the unconscious dynamics of the mind.
Mm-hmm. It all makes sense. So thank you for reminding me.
Sweet. Awesome. Stepping into willingness with you. And, to recognize, there are 4 questions you ask yourself when you become symptomatic to tell whether you're in a disease process or a healing process. Mm-hmm. So if you find yourself becoming symptomatic, and, this is, for me, part of what I developed to understand it, because I was raised in a world where I was taught that pills were the solution to everything. I mean, I lived on an inhalator and drugs, and, until I discovered naturopathic medicine, I thought that had something to do with healing. I now realize it had nothing to do with healing. It has to do with treatment, which isn't a bad thing, but treatment isn't healing. They're 2 different things. And so when we step into that space of willingness, and the symptoms start to flow, I ask myself the question, 1, have I been doing more and more of the right things? Check mark. If that's a yes, then doing more and more of the right things, I'm building vitality. Question 2, just before these symptoms struck, had I hit a new level of vitality? Yes, I went to bed last night. I was high as a kite. Man, I've discovered the truth. I'm rocking. This is awesome. And then the next morning, you get up and you get, wonder if anybody got the number of the Mack truck that went through your room during the night. It's like, what happened? I was so high last night, I'm lower than a snake's belly. Well, that's one of the things. You hit a new level of vitality, and now your structure says, oh, so now some of this old stuff I've been hiding from myself, I can start to clean out. You start to move out the garbage. And so instead of running away from what vitalizes, you move toward what vitalizes.
That's exactly what
moving.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, it's exactly what happened. I went out. I hadn't ridden bikes, my bicycle. I used to be an avid bicycler. Anyway, I went out last Thursday, and I started that process, and I started doing the processing and the Avicin, and I noticed my relationship with my wife got better. I don't know why or how, but anyway, we had the best time. But then all these other issues popped up. Anyway, your description is very accurate for my life anyway. Thanks.
New level of vitality. And you can expect literally over a period of years as you continue to do your work, rather than, this work is never done. You started 35 years ago, and forces operate that bring you back. My suggestion here is that you make sure that you put in your plan that you're going to do your inner work for the rest of your life, because when you realize that what we're facing are these generational patterns and dynamics from literally unresolved dynamics from the closest generations, the last 2, 3, 4 generations, is enough to handle. But then you realize that ultimately you're dealing with stuff that went back 2, 10, 50, 100 generations. Those energetic patterns that have never been, handled. There's some research being done actually in several different circles, where they're showing, for instance, one of them that I'd just come across recently was a researcher at, I forget what university, but one of the big universities, and they were showing that children of people who were in the Holocaust had literally, their physiology was altered. The profiles of certain chemicals in their bloodstream were different from their peers whose parents had not been in the Holocaust. So those physiological changes take place generation after generation after generation after generation. And at some point, you've got to work through and come out the other side of all of that. And it's a process.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Honored and delighted, sir. Any other thoughts for you? Anything else we can do to support you?
No, I'm good. I'll be in contact.
Okay. Have you downloaded the app yet?
I got the app, but I didn't start the worksheets. But I'll probably start them today. I remember doing them.
Well, the app, there are two different versions right there. You can just jump on it and boom, 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 and you can save them as a PDF on your phone. So,
yeah,
go for it, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Doctor.
Last one. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Hey, it's Michael, by the way.
We have another hand up, and I believe it is...
Oh, great. Let's go for it.
Mr. Terry, 336. You're on the air.
Hey, Michael and Jeanie.
Hey, young man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I got a little funny, okay? I think it's funny anyway. My funny's not always funny to everyone else, but another bullet point that I want to add to when I know I'm in headed in the right direction as far as, the vitality and all, okay?
Right.
Am I triggered by anything Michael says? Okay.
Terry, I've never triggered anything for you, have I? Have I given you opportunities to learn forgiveness? No.
Exactly. And it's like, am I confused by what Michael just said? Okay. It's like, because I'm getting ready to learn something, okay? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
This little personal sidebar. Jeanie, you may have a little experience with that.
Right.
No, I've never triggered anything for Jeanie. That's never happened.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my God!
Yeah.
What a woman she is. She just deserves some kind of medal or something. Hanging with you this long. But yeah, when that guy was talking, you're going over that list. I was like, oh yeah, I've got a real strong indicator for me. And I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I assure you and guarantee you that Jeanie has never given me any opportunity to learn forgiveness, and I know that I've never given her any opportunity to learn forgiveness either.
Yeah.
Liar,
That's
pants
right.
on fire, right?
Exactly. It's beautiful. And I'm working on my mind shifter. Thank you very much for that mind shifter yesterday. Yeah, there we go. There's another breath on that one. And
good one. Yeah.
Continuing to move forward. Yeah. Thanks for the radio show. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for holding a space in a continuous stream of hundreds and hundreds of hours. So thank you guys. That's all I got.
And what Terry have I triggered for you recently?
Well, I had it all figured out with that little insight on the story from the guys yesterday. The thing on YouTube. I was there the day before. It's like, yeah, oh yeah. It's like, oh, I got all this, and then it's like, what's the first thing you say to me?
Did I break your bubble, burst your bubble?
Yeah. What was the first thing you said? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
It's all fine and good. It's all fine and good if you want to live in the one world blame universe or something like that. Got one piece missing. They had shifted the whole blame game just so subtly. It was like the old fish hooking them out. It's like, oh yeah, all right. And so I went for it, and then.
Oh, well, I'm just delighted to be so truly helpful.
Yeah, it is truly helpful, and it's like that's what we need. It's like you have to trust someone to tell you the truth. And be willing to stand in it when the truth is presented and it conflicts with your belief system. That's what the box on that worksheet is so important. I can't check that.
Well, and most of humanity today, most of humanity today is living in blockage of truth. That's the condition of most human minds. That's like the major disorder of the planet.
It's ingrained,
so
it's tough to break through. You got to really be committed to hanging in there and going through it, you know.
Well, and you'll notice on the worksheet there are two places where you commit yourself to truth. It's that important. It's the only idea that's there twice.
Mm-hmm.
Honoring truth. And you know, over the years, if we look at the personal code evaluation, the number one issue in, I don't know, I've never sat down and broken them down, but I would say the number one issue in 80% of people's personal code evaluation is blockage to truth, is the inability to honor truth. I want my story. You know, I like this story better than having to be responsible and face what's going on inside of me. I love to have the ability to blame somebody else. Oh, the one world religion of blame that started in the Garden of Eden. Been going on for a long time. And we hear people in the Christian community, oh, they're concerned about this one world religion that's coming. No, it's been here since the garden. And, you know, if you think somebody else is the problem in your life, then, you know, you're a card-carrying member, and that's something the world trains us into. So joining you in honoring truth, my friend.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the show's actually, we're a few seconds over. I'm surprised it hasn't cut us off yet, but thanks for your calling in, and let's have a conversation tomorrow. And everybody, have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.